Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Right Stuff here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. We are simulcasting our broadcast today, so we also want to say hello to our friends on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Glad you all could join us for The Right Stuff, where we connect with authors to share their stories, what it's been like for them to bring their words to life, connect with their audience, and of course, give their tips for all of you today. And I'm so excited about today's guest. Dr. Teresa A. Smith is no stranger to us here on Amazon. She's been a part of, I think, every other show we have here. So we're glad to be able to welcome her to The Right Stuff to talk about her journey as a writer, what it's been like for her to add that title to her many credentials, but also the different types of books she's been able to write, because she also has a children's book coming down the pipeline as well, which is going to add a totally different dimension. So we'll talk to her about how she's able to balance all of that as a storyteller, and of course let you guys know how to stay connected with her. Dr. Taz, hello to you and welcome to The Right Stuff.
Thank you so much, Cyrus, for having me.
Hey, glad to have you. Manswell, hello to you over on the Facebook side. Glad you could be able to join us. So, Taz, you and I were talking before we went live here. This show is different than a lot of the broadcasts I have here on Amazon Live. I'm used to having authors on for sure, but typically we are talking about a particular book that they've written, really diving into that. But The Right Stuff is really about diving into you as the author. So I want to begin there. When people call you author, Teresa A. Smith, is that something you've been able to sit with and become comfortable with?
I'm slowly becoming comfortable with it, Cyrus, because it's weighty, it's weighty. And so I'm becoming comfortable with it. Believe it or not, my first love is fiction.
Hmm.
Even though I started out in the nonfiction arena. And I think that once I get my first fiction book written, I'll sit with it better because I love fiction. Fiction has been like a torch for me, and it just helped me to navigate life my whole life. So the fact that I'm writing nonfiction is sort of like two sides of me, and there's sort of a
Yeah.
little battle going on.
Interesting. Well, I should let our audience know, Taza, they may not realize you and I met because of a fellow author, Jacqueline Thomas,
Mhm.
who has been a friend of mine for years. It's been great to be able to watch her successful career. That's how you and I initially connected. So when you were around other authors like Jacqueline, who has built such a great brand for herself, was that something that you looked at and aspired toward, or was it just something, as you said, just something you always knew in some form you wanted to do?
Well, I always knew that I was going to write. And
Hmm.
as I've said in other shows, I thought I was going to write about self-esteem, but I never thought about it being nonfiction because
Hmm.
I love fiction. I'm the type of person, when I was growing up, I read, what was it, Rebecca Sunnybrook Farm, Nancy
Hmm.
Drew, the Hardy Boys, and I
Ah,
love all that type of, then I moved to like the spy novels and,
hmm.
PIs and stuff. So I love, and the Harlequin, shout
Hmm.
out to Jacqueline. I love romance. So I always thought it was going to be in that genre. But, I will say this, being around Jacqueline, I think that God moved me and positioned me at the right time because she's a writing coach, she's a mentor for me,
Hmm.
and she is so structured in how she does her work. And to know someone who's as prolific as she is, it's very humbling for me. So I'm still an infant, or maybe even an embryo in my journey as an author compared to some of the individuals that I have an opportunity to interface with.
Yeah. And so for you though, Taz, people have gotten to know you for different things. Your very first book that you kind of introduced yourself to is a book I have here, Stronger. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it in the carousel for those joining us on the Amazon side there. So you did start off writing nonfiction. Talk about that process then, because like you said, being such a fan of fiction, how did you go into writing a book that was a semi-autobiography?
It was, I had to lean on my organizational skills. I had to figure out what I wanted to tell and the best way to tell it because I
Mhm.
came up with multiple ideas. And I'm so linear in my thinking sometimes. But I didn't want, even with that book, I didn't want it just to be my story. I wanted to add my quote unquote workbook component to it. It was
Mhm.
telling my story, but I wanted my story to be an inspiration. And I love music. So music and lyrics are throughout the book because lyrics are songs have always comforted me. We think about, having a breakup and you listen to the sad love songs.
Mhm.
Well, I've just always listened to music, and so it always has soothed me. And so I wanted to share that part of my journey also, so that folks could see the secular music that comforts me or gives me some insight, as well as the sacred music or gospel music that does that. So I tried to figure out how could I tell a story in a different way that would have the impact, hopefully, that I wanted, which was to encourage other people. I've also got declarations in there, but would still be true to who I am as a person who lived that.
Yeah. So when it came to the first book, Taz, and I'm going to open it up here, and again, it's available right now, paperback and Kindle for you guys. So Taz, this book came out in 2017. Wow,
I
2017.
know,
So
I
7 years
know.
this year.
Yeah.
Sylvia, hello to you. Good to be able to see you. Sylvia Dickey Smith is joining us. She says excellent ideas there. So 7 years now. How does that feel to have had this book out for 7 years, Taz? And what was it like for you seeing it and being able to say, I did it?
I think I got my doctorate in 2012. I think
Okay.
it's 2012 is behind me. But to complete this book, it was like I delivered a baby, because
Mhm.
it does depict my life, and to be able to hold it in my hand, I'm on the cover of it, and it's like, Mama, I did it.
Yeah.
I finally did what I said I was going to do. And so for me, it was surreal. And then as you asked me now, 7 years, I know it's 7 years because it's 2017, but I hadn't thought about all the living and all the learning I
Yeah.
have gained as an author in the last
Mhm.
7 years.
Yeah.
Um,
That's interesting. I think about too, as we kind of think about this journey, Toz, for you. Not only, of course, have you been able to write a book, but you've been able to be at events and to share that. Talk to us about that. What was it like for you to be able to let your family and friends know, hey, I wrote a book?
well, I did have I'm going to turn my laptop.
Okay.
I did have a book launch.
Yes.
And so I had family, sorors, friends, they were there. We had a wonderful meal. It was a great program. And we unveiled the poster that you just saw. We unveiled it. And I did a book reading, and I did book signing. And it was like, oh my God. And then I was doing vending events. And people would come up and they talk with me, and then some hadn't heard of me and some had not. They were buying my book, and then sometimes people would reach back out to me on social media. And for me, it was like, okay, you started a journey. Now you got to figure out, how do you live this journey? Because when I wrote this book, even I didn't even think about all of the PR pieces, and how do you get it into people's hands? How do you help them to understand?
Yeah.
Some people do like book clubs,
Mhm.
things of that nature. I just hadn't even thought about that. For me, as Jackie would say, I was throwing up on the page. I was throwing up on the page, putting it out. And I didn't put as much time into thinking about, okay, you get the book out, now what? And I
Mhm.
think, Cyrus, that's so important when you talk about the writing process, because the book may be a heavy lift, but sometimes the heaviest lift comes after the book has been released.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and I think folks don't realize that, because I'm going to be honest, I didn't realize how much of a heavy lift it would be once the book was out.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing, and that's why I wanted to create this show and this
Mhm.
platform, Taz, because I think a lot of times people think, if I write the book, people are just going to know who I am. Everyone's going to come. I'm going to
Yes.
get a call from Oprah.
Yes.
I'm going to be on this bestsellers list. Not thinking about, literally, there are books published every day.
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and if you don't do your part to get yours out there, it gets pushed further and further
Yes.
down until it doesn't matter how
Mhm.
good it is if
Yep.
people don't get to know about it. So, how did you then tackle that aspect of it? Because your book is amazing, your story is remarkable. Did you, after the book was published, you start talking with people? Is that when you started formulating a plan, or come talk to us about the plan for our author viewers out there who may be thinking about their own book launch, Taz, or how to get their book into new hands? How did you then go about deciding how you were going to strategize that?
Well, I was doing vending, and vending was good. And this is long before COVID, guys. So I was doing quite a bit of vending. But what I did was I added other things. As I was out vending, I saw how vendors were doing things. So it wasn't just my books. I added other materials. Sometimes I'll have on a band, one of my wristbands. I don't have one on one today. I did a piece of jewelry. That's a butterfly. I don't have it on today. But I did other things to build it out. And the reason I did the butterfly, so it's custom, is because of the transformation even then that I went through, and I wanted something that would represent that. The wristlets that I have are Don't Quit, Seeing Clearly. There are things that I actually, titles or things that I said in the book. And I thought about that as a reminder, because sometimes we have to have that physical reminder as we're living through each day. Also, I did t-shirts, my Stronger t-shirts. Sometimes you guys will see me in my Stronger t-shirt. Those were, I developed the logos. Those were custom t-shirts. So when I went out vending and selling my book, I had all those things that were sort of a wrap around for my audience. And I did pretty good with that. Then I realized, okay, but people are still only seeing you in person. So if you don't know me, you don't know to come out. And that's when, I was strategically positioned, because I think God always knows that what we need. And I became part of a writers group. And that is how I met Jacqueline. And that then took me to you. And so it's about, there's 5 of us. Is it 5 or 6 of us? And we still are hanging tight. And the goal was for each one of us to publish our book. And so I've published several since then. And one of the writers is she is a phenomenal fiction writer. And I spoke with her the other day. I'm going to have to text her after this show and say, now, where are you at with your book? Because she is phenomenal. I mean, it's bestseller. It is just that good, because what we were doing was giving feedback to each other on our writing. So we would come together at a designated time and we would give the feedback, because we read the chapters and we would provide the feedback. But also it was an opportunity for us to sort of strategize. How do you get your books in front of more people? And as you said, I met you through Jacqueline Thomas, because she was like, oh, you need to connect with Cyrus Webb, because Cyrus is an Amazon reviewer, blah, 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 blah. And so if someone gives me good advice, I'm on it. And so I got on it. And so from there, I began to learn, because there were things that I didn't know. I became more active on social media. I'm looking at what you're doing. I'm looking at what other authors are doing. And really, I sort of, for lack of a better way of saying it, guys, it has been on the job training for me. I think and you know how you are, Cyrus, you know how we are. And you know how I am off camera, but I'm going to say this, don't bring this back up when we go off camera. I think I had to learn some things myself the hard way, because if I didn't learn it the hard way, because you can tell me, but I don't understand it until I start going through it. And then I began to see it. And then when I'm having success, it's like, oh, well, that worked. Maybe I didn't do it exactly the way someone advised me, but it's working. And then you start getting your momentum. And then for me, I now look at social media different. As you would say, are you on social media, or are you utilizing social media? Well, now I'm beginning to utilize it, because I was late to social media because I was finishing my doctorate. So I can remember not too many years before 2017 that I didn't even know what Facebook was. My sister set my Facebook up for me because I had no idea. So I'm still about 10 years behind everybody else. But in order for me to catch up, I got to want to catch up, guys. That's what I want you to get from this. I got to want to catch up. People can advise me as much as they want, but I got to want to catch up. And I remember when I first was getting on social media, I was tracking my metrics. Well, I'm tracking my metrics again, but every week at a designated day, I had a spreadsheet. I would put down what my followers were on all the social media platforms that I was on. If I picked up new followers, my likes and things of that nature, because I knew I needed to track it. I was still a baby at that point. I just didn't understand what I was tracking. Now I track it differently, because as you would say to me, who is your audience? And that is the hardest thing for me. That's the hardest thing for me even now to pinpoint, because they may think I'm all over the place, but for me, it's still all transformation and stronger. It's just that it's a different product that I'm putting out.
Love that. Love that explanation, Toss. Hello to you, Latanya. Good to be able to see you. She says hello as well to you, Toss. Ricardo, hello to you joining us on Facebook. He says, keep growing and learning. And Latanya says, awesome. So here's the thing, Toss, and I love what you said. There are several components in there you mentioned. So let me first set, because, our time will be up and I
I
still
know.
have more to talk about. For those who are just watching, welcome. You all are watching The Right Stuff here on Amazon Live. We are simulcasting this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Our guest is Dr. Teresa A. Smith, or Dr. Taz, as we've gotten to know her. We're talking with her about her writing journey, what it's been like for her since her first book released 7 years ago, Stronger, that's available here on Amazon. What it's been like for her to be able to see herself on the cover, to be able to meet her audience. And that's an important question, I think, for our viewers out there, especially that are writers or aspiring writers. Taz, hello to you. Tina, good to be able to see you over on the Facebook side as well. Who am I writing this for? And it's such an important question, because as I do also social media coaching, one of the things I talk about, and Taz, is who are you
Yeah.
posting this for?
Mhm.
Because if you're posting it for you, then you really don't know what other people are going to think of it, or if they're even interested in it, you
Mhm.
know? And so I think that is the cool thing. Trisha says, I need to start tracking my social media.
Yes.
Noted. Great.
Mhm.
That's a great thing there, Trisha. So talk about that, because as I mentioned, you have written now three nonfiction books.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, four
Yeah.
nonfiction books.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
there,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's Stronger. There's From
Mhm.
Bravery to Victory. That is an ebook here on Amazon. I'm gonna go ahead and highlight it for you guys there. Then there is Transformation, which is the third book, and then there's Transformation: The Bounce Back. So you've written four
Mhm.
nonfiction books,
Yeah.
and then you shocked a lot of people, Todd, by then releasing this. And I'm going to highlight it for our audience here. You all can get the Kindle or the paperback of Transform with Taj Healthy Recipes, your cookbook. So, what was that like for you to go from being known as a coach, an inspirational, speaker, and author, to then releasing a cookbook? What was it
Well,
like?
so it was the best thing. I love my cookbook. And it lets, because the way we did it was, and I take good advice from folks, guys. You got to be open to advice. Even if you don't want to hear it, take it, and then eventually you'll get it. And so what my cookbook is, I tell you what inspired the dish. So
Mhm,
that meant and I got to do it in a creative way. So it's the truth, but it's fiction, but it's the truth. It comes across as being fiction, but it's not. It's really the truth. And
mhm,
so therefore my creative juices, my real creative juices got to come forth. And so I love it. And of course, I cook live, and then I got my Transformatage show, which is what the cookbook is named after. So I love that storytelling.
mhm,
And it's just like, that's the most important thing to me. So it's like, how do I marry my storytelling with my coaching?
mhm,
And that's where I'm trying to figure it out, guys. Because, a friend of mine who writes in so many different genres, I'm thinking now as I make this statement, I think all of his stuff, and he'll correct me later, is still fiction.
mhm,
But you see, I'm nonfiction. I've written more nonfiction that's been published than I
mhm,
have my fiction. And as Cyrus alluded to, I've got a children's book that we've been working on for quite some time, because, and the reason it's not out, and this is something for you guys to remember, the person who's helping me edit, they asked a question. And it took me a while to be able to answer the question. And then once I could answer the question, I didn't have time to continue writing. But basically, what the person said to me, in essence, you haven't developed this character enough. I
mhm,
got your story, but it didn't sound believable. It was still not deep enough. And so then I had to go back, and it took me some time, because again, I'm patterning this fiction after a real person.
yeah,
And I'm like, okay, how do I stay true to who I know the person is, but how do I then develop that character? Because I don't want it to be one and done, because they're
mhm,
such an interesting little person. So it's like, okay, how do I do that? So I had to go back, and it took me a while to process it. And I started making notes, character development notes, because remember, before, I'm not writing fiction. I'm writing coaching. So it's different. So I'm like, okay, you got to go back and you got to develop this person out. And for me, it's like developing them out at this age. or at this level, then the next level, then the next level. Because what I realize now, as I write the stories, I'm dropping nuggets, or if I was talking Marvel and everybody, I'm dropping them Easter eggs.
Yeah.
That you're going to eventually see as this little person gets older. So that means I have to be very intentional and on point as I develop that. Well, with the cookbook, I'm going back to the cookbook, Cyrus. With the cookbook, because I'm creating recipes, my creative juices are always flowing. So I love it. I just absolutely love it. And I think when I'm cooking, it comes through because it allows me to be free. And that's so important.
Yeah, such a good point. Dorothy says, "Wow, well, here's the thing. So whether you've gotten to know Taz from the nonfiction she was writing that is inspirational books like Stronger, or her cookbook Transform with Taz, I think the thing that's interesting, the reason why I think this is great for you to be on the right stuff, is because I think a lot of times people don't think about that just because they built up an audience with one thing does not mean that audience is going to translate to something else. So how did you prepare for that part? You knew what you wanted to do, but how did you prepare to reach your audience for this project?
Well, I have a person in my life, and they said, "Why you want to write a cookbook?" Because I've been wanting to write a cookbook my whole life, and I like to cook, and it relaxes me, and I want to do that. And so then, that person be asking me these questions, and so we came up with a plan, and I wrote my book. And so then the question is, now how you gonna get people to buy it? I don't know. So, after consultation, you got to be open to consultation, guys, and they're going to get me. Sometimes you got to pay. But you have to be open to it. Well, this is my
wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Right now.
It's getting warm. Are you talking about me?
This is a public service announcement. If you want to be coached and you want to get somewhere, Cyrus Webb. I'm serious. And so we had.
Look, it was like, I was thinking to myself, I think I had a conversation with you. This is sounding familiar.
It is. And so it's like, okay, because people don't know you as a cook. And I'm like, well, yeah, not the people out there, they don't, but other people do. And so, it's like, okay, what are you going to do? So, I started cooking live, which I'm going to tell you guys, I had to adjust to that, even though I'm in the room that I used to do my Friday morning inspiration, because I used to do it every Friday morning. And I'm in this space. But that's a big difference. I'm prepping for that, and I had to get adjusted to that. And then my nerves calmed down. It was like, okay, you turn it on. But when you're cooking live, and I had not, which in hindsight, I probably should have, but I'm glad I didn't. I didn't study other individuals who cook live. I hadn't studied other individuals who are putting reels out there of foods that they cook. I did not. I just didn't. So I went, head first, and I had to learn how to do things. And that was a shock for me. But I had great friends who would come on and they would be cheering me on. And I'd be like, "Hi, so-and-so, thank you for joining me." I couldn't really see them on my phone, but they were there. And so that gave me the encouragement. Then I started surveying just a little bit of what other people were doing, because the one thing that I've had to retrain, Cyrus, if I could leave folks with anything today, it would be you need to observe your competition.
Yeah.
You got to observe them. Not that you're competing with them, but competition as in your niche. You need to see what works. Then you determine how do you take what works and make it suit who you are. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me from learning how to cook live, because I found what works for me. I love it when I do it, and I'm so excited. But it was work. And that's how I began to find that audience. And as you know, I'm paying attention to my metrics now, because I'm trying to determine who does my audience want? Do they want Dr. Taz, or do they want Taz in the kitchen? We're the same people, but we're different.
Yeah.
And that is to be determined by what the metrics show you. And then the other thing I would say, if your metrics tell you, and somebody will probably say this back to me in a couple of months, guys, if your metrics tell you they want Taz in the kitchen instead of transform with Taz, instead of transformation with Taz, then you got to be open to that. you know, because
Are you talking about me again? Because that
yes,
sounds like
yes,
something I was.
yes, yes, I'm talking about you, Todd,
I just
because
want you know I'm a little slow sometimes, Todd. I
no,
just
you're
want to make.
not. No,
Wait,
you're
wait a
not.
minute. That sounds like something I would do, though.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Okay.
And he knows I'm gonna be resistant because I want to do them both,
Yeah.
but I won't be as effective. And I got to
Mm,
get that in my brain. And, that's the hard part about being an artist. Because when you
yes.
are a writer, you are an artist. And what is it? My girl said, I'm serious about what does
Yeah.
it have to do? I'm serious about this right
Yeah.
here. So,
But Todd, you bring up something so fascinating because I have a friend of mine, a dear friend. I've known her now for almost 2 decades, and she has written a lot of books.
mhm,
But she wrote a certain book that got, I can't say the name of the book because then people know what I'm talking about, but she wrote
mhm,
a certain book that people fell in love with. And she ended up writing a sequel to that book. That book became a bestseller.
uh-huh,
They wanted another book.
uh-huh.
That book became a bestseller. She has now written over a dozen books in this series. And I said to her, do you want to keep writing just this one?
Yeah,
She's like, this is what my audience is showing me that they
you
want.
want. Mm-hmm,
So then you have the choice. You can be
mm-hmm,
resistant to
yes.
the data as you're talking about
Mm-hmm,
and do what you want to do
mm-hmm,
and not have the success that you could have.
mm-hmm,
Or you could give what actual readers are saying or an audience is saying they want,
mm-hmm,
and find that success that you have not had in your career before.
mm-hmm,
And I bring that up for this reason. I think a lot of times it's not always that easy to do it.
mm-hmm.
But at least the good thing is the caveat you mentioned. You like them both,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, and I think for a lot of creators will say I love being able to do something that I would even do for free. Well,
Mm-hmm.
here you're able to make some money doing it.
Yeah,
Just having you have to
yeah.
choose it. Jafar, hello to you on the Amazon side. Thank you so much for the follow. Our guest for this episode is Dr. Teresa A. Smith. You see her here. We're talking about her writing journey. She's the author of several books there, Jafar. You can see there in our carousel there. Her very first book, I'll highlight it again, is this book, Stronger. And then she has her book From Bravery to Victory that is just an ebook. You can get it there for $3.99. She then has her book Transformation that I have here. And then there's Transformation the Bounce Back. You can see there. And then her cookbook that's here, Transform with Taz Healthy Recipes. So again, a little something for everyone. Taz, the time always flies by when we are
Oh, God.
together. And, but
Jeez.
it's always such a great conversation with you. What advice would you give to our audience out there, especially the storytellers out there or aspiring writers, Taz, about their goal, making their goals and their plans for this year?
I would say, first of all, you're writing all the time. So have a pad with you, whatever, and jot things down. And if you're faster on your phone, take those notes on your phone. But
Mm,
always grab the faults when they come, because when you're ready, you're gonna need to go back and you won't have them. Also, I would say stay open. Often we go down a path and we don't know what the final destination is. And I think
mm,
when you're creative, you need to stay open, because the road that you're trying to travel may not be the road that you need to be on, but you have to be open to that and you have to be mindful and observe what's happening. And I think if you do that, you'll end up in the right space at the right time. And then it's just a matter of applying yourself and
yeah.
understanding that it doesn't happen overnight. There are those that it does happen, but it doesn't typically happen overnight. And I'm going to say this, Cyrus, I'm a best-selling author, guys, but I
Mm,
became best-selling because of the cookbook. And that's not
mhm,
lost on me.
mhm.
It's not lost. So again, I'm trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be and who my audience is. And that's okay, because eventually I will find that out, just as you will find out where you're supposed to be, what your genre is, and how you're going to craft and share your stories with the world.
Love that. Dr. Taz, always a pleasure. And let me first say how thankful I am that Jacqueline introduced us to each other. You have not only been a great friend of mine, but someone I've been so excited for, to root for in all your different projects and what you do. And definitely looking forward to your continued success. How can our viewers stay connected with you, Taz?
Well, the best thing to do is to follow me on Instagram, Dr. Teresa Smith. I have my link tree there, and it has all of my other social media and books and interviews. Everything is just right there. That's the best way to stay up with me.
All right. Again, everyone, Dr. Teresa A. Smith has been our guest here on The Right Stuff. Definitely appreciate her stopping by. And Taz, looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you so much, Cyrus, for having me.
Hey, glad to do it. And we thank you all for joining us for this episode of The Right Stuff. We'll see you guys back here next week. Until then, I'm Cyrus Webb saying thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.